Hi, I'm Kate from Nancy's Notions. Today I'd like to show you how to create fashion and home accessories in a quick, modern way. We have a rope sewing Reinvented starters kit. This kit includes clothesline rope, top stitching needles, an assortment of leather needles, wonder clips, stiletto, and a book with an inspiring DVD. With this kit, you'll be able to transform all-purpose thread and plain clothesline rope into sleek coasters, mini dishes, oval trays, totes, bags, even a lidded basket. Join me and let's rope in your creativity. Now, some of the first bowls I tried making many years ago were fabric wrapped rope, and we'd actually have strips of fabric that we would wrap right around the rope, and it took a long time. It used a lot of fabric, but now, as you can see, we have no fabric and the thread is truly the highlight. So that makes these new Reinvented rope sewing projects so much fun. So let's go to the sewing machine. To start with, I've threaded my machine. I also have a top stitch needle. Top stitching needle is really important for this project because you're going through a lot of thickness. This is rope, so it's a lot to go through. It's not just a couple layers of fabric. So definitely start with a new top stitch needle. My little sample, I've actually used a variegated thread. It gives a totally new look, but in the machine I have just a plain all-purpose sewing thread in a pretty color. So that's the beauty of this technique, is you choose the color and that becomes the color of your project. I would recommend watching the DVD first. I found it incredibly helpful and really inspiring. It was fun to watch. But then also have the book handy because it gives you really helpful tips on setup and preparing your rope sewing project. Here I've got my first portion coiled, and I've coiled it rather tightly, and I've just pinned it here to hold the layers kind of in line. I'm going to sew with a zigzag stitch and back and forth several times to make it more of a satin stitch. And I'm going to be very careful not to stitch over my pin. As you see, the presser foot was really bogging down right at all this thickness. So what I'm going to do is just lift the presser foot. I'm going to actually just place my tail end of my rope underneath. I'm not going to be stitching through that, but I'm going to use it to help level the presser foot, and it should progress across my coil just fine. We're going to create a cross, adding another row of satin stitching to really stabilize and support that center of the coaster. And this time I'm going to put that little end of the rope underneath to stabilize my presser foot. So now I'm actually going to stitch between each row of rope. So wherever the rope meets the previous circle of rope, that's what I'll be stitching over with a more open zigzag. So I'm going to change my zigzag length just a little bit and then start sewing again. I needed to lift my presser foot and pivot just a little bit to get around that tight circle. And I always tried to have the needle land in the rightmost position. That way, when I'd pivot, I got a nice, clean, circular kind of configuration. Once you get the idea and get that coaster a little bit bigger, the stitching becomes easier and easier. You won't have to pivot. You'll just be able to shift your coaster in line real easily. So this is what it looks like when you're done. In just a few minutes, you can have a coaster, and a few more minutes, you can have a whole set of coasters completed. I'm going to show you one of my coasters that grew out of control. I didn't have a designated amount of rope set aside, so I just let it grow, and I started having fun with the stitch widths. You can see I started out a little wider in the center. Then I decided, well, let's see what happens if I went narrower. And then by adding another 2 rows of wider stitching, it gave a nice movement and feel to the finished coaster. Well, it's no longer a coaster. It's bigger than a coaster, more like a trivet. But it was so much fun, so I hope you'll have fun as well. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, hit the like button and leave us a comment below. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. We encourage you to show us your completed projects or tools in use. Feel free to post a photo on Instagram and use hashtag Nancy's Notions. Thanks so much for watching. Ready, Colton?
I was born ready.
All right. Let's wrap this. Let's wrap the rope. Okay, the old-fashioned way. Got it. This is so much easier.
Yes.
We're off to a splendid start.